John Harris stood at the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, his eyes fixed on the main screen showing strange objects moving at the edge of our solar system. These weren't asteroids or comets. The patterns were too precise, too deliberate. "Confirmed, sir. We're tracking 17 objects larger than 2 kilometers in length," said Peter Wilson, the young radar specialist. His voice trembled slightly. "Natural bodies don't move like that," John said quietly. He rubbed his chin, feeling the stubble from his missed morning shave. "Run the Kaufman protocol." Susan Lee, his second-in-command, looked up sharply. "The first contact scenario. Are you sure?" John nodded once. The room fell silent as the reality sank in. After decades of searching the stars, wondering if humanity was alone, they had their answer. But this wasn't the friendly greeting from the cosmos that scientists had hoped for. These objects were moving with purpose, military purpose. "Alert level 2, John ordered. "Silent observations only. No active scans that might reveal our defensive capabilities." Susan began typing commands into her console. "Should we inform the governments?" "Not yet," John replied. "Let's gather more data first. I don't want to start a panic based on incomplete information." The Orbital Defense Station, officially named Weather Monitoring Platform Delta, had been secretly built by a coalition of major world powers. Few people on Earth knew of its true purpose: to serve as humanity's first line of defense against possible hostile contact from space. For 15 years, John had commanded this station, often wondering if his position was merely symbolic. Now, as the alien vessels approached, he felt a strange mix of vindication and dread. "Sir," Peter called out, "the objects have decelerated. They're taking up positions beyond Mars' orbit." "Show me," John ordered. The main screen zoomed in on the nearest vessel. Its design was unlike anything human engineers would create. All smooth curves and strange geometrical patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. No visible engines, no obvious weapon systems, but the ship radiated power. "They're scanning us," Lisa Chen reported from her sensor station. "Passive scans only, but they're thorough. They're mapping every satellite, every defense installation, power grid patterns, everything." John's jaw tightened. "They're assessing us." "Like we're being sized up," Susan agreed. "Get me Director Rogers," John said. "Secure channel." Minutes later, the stern face of Lily Rogers, director of the International Space Defense Initiative, appeared on his private screen. "I take it this isn't a drill," she said, noticing John's expression. 17 vessels, Director. Advanced design. They're conducting detailed scans of Earth's infrastructure and defense systems." Lily's expression didn't change, but John saw her posture stiffen. "Your assessment?" "This isn't a scientific expedition," John replied. "The formation, the scanning patterns, they're military in nature. I believe we should activate the orbital defense grid." "That's a significant step, Commander. Once activated, those systems can't remain hidden for long." "With respect, Director, I believe they already know about our defenses. They're just confirming what their long-range scans told them." Lily considered this for a moment. "Activate, but maintain passive mode only. No targeting locks, no power-ups that might be interpreted as aggressive." "Understood." After the call ended, John gave the orders to his crew. Throughout Earth's orbit, hidden satellites and stealth platforms quietly came to life, their weapon systems in standby mode. "What do you think they want?" Susan asked quietly, standing beside him. John watched the alien vessels on the screen, their positions forming a perfect geometric pattern around Mars. "I don't know," he admitted, "but they didn't travel across the stars just to say hello." The next 12 hours passed in tense silence. Then, as Earth rotated into darkness, the first alien message arrived. Grand Admiral Vextora stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship, watching the blue planet spin slowly on the main display. His four-fingered hand brushed across the control panel, zooming in on various locations, cities, military bases, power plants. Primitive, he said, his voice deep and slightly mechanical through the translation device. Their technology is barely past the atomic age. Captain Drell, his second in command, nodded in agreement. Their most advanced weapon systems appear to be nuclear missiles and some form of energy-based orbital defenses, nothing that could penetrate even our scout ship shields. Vextora's outer eyelids blinked slowly, a gesture of satisfaction in his species. The Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Some surrendered immediately, recognizing the futility of resistance. Others fought briefly before their defenses crumbled. A few fought to the bitter end, their civilizations reduced to ash. Earth would likely fall into the second category, a brief, pointless resistance followed by surrender. Begin standard assessment protocols, Vextora ordered. Catalog all major resource deposits, evaluate the species for labor potential, and identify key strategic points for our garrison forces. On Earth, in a windowless room beneath the Pentagon, Dr. Samantha Collins worked frantically to decode the alien transmissions. For 3 days straight, she had barely slept, fueled by coffee and the desperate need to understand what humanity was facing. "I've got something," she announced, drawing the attention of the military officers and scientists crowded around her workstation. They're not encrypting their communications very heavily, almost like they don't care if we hear them. General Frank Wilson leaned over her shoulder. "What are they saying?" Samantha adjusted her glasses and pointed to her screen where alien symbols were being replaced with English text. "They're discussing Earth like it's property. They're cataloging our resources, our population centers. Look at this. They're evaluating humans for labor efficiency and resistance potential." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. "This isn't a diplomatic mission," Secretary of Defense Richard Palmer said quietly. "This is an invasion force." Back on the Imperial flagship, Vextora received the final assessment reports. Earth contains significant deposits of rare minerals valuable to the Empire. The human population could provide adequate labor for mining operations. Their technological level posed no serious threat. "Classification complete," he announced. "Designate Earth as a Class 3 acquisition target. Standard protocols apply." "Should we proceed with initial contact, Admiral?" Captain Drell asked. "Yes. Prepare Ambassador Krell for his mission. The usual terms: surrender with minimal destruction, or resistance with maximum consequences." In a smaller vessel, Ambassador Krell prepared for his journey to Earth. Unlike the military officers, Krell's species resembled humans more closely, an intentional choice made by the Empire to reduce the psychological shock of first contact. His true appearance remained hidden beneath carefully designed holographic projectors. "Review the cultural briefing again," he instructed his aides. "I want to understand their leadership structures and fear responses. The faster they surrender, the less we'll need to destroy." On Earth, Dr. Collins made another breakthrough. "They're sending a vessel toward us," she reported. "A smaller ship breaking away from their main fleet. Based on their communications, they're sending some kind of representative." "To negotiate?" General Wilson asked hopefully. Samantha's expression remained grim. "No, sir. Based on what I've translated, they're sending someone to accept our surrender." President Martinez was immediately informed. In the White House Situation Room, he looked around at his advisors, military leaders, and scientific experts. "What options do we have?" he asked. "Can we fight them?" Commander Harris, who had been quietly observing from the corner, finally spoke. "Mr. President, based on what we've observed of their technology, conventional warfare would be suicide. But we may have one option that they don't know about." "What option?" the President asked. "Project Prometheus. Sir, it's time to bring it online." The Imperial envoy ship entered Earth's atmosphere at precisely 1200 GMT. Unlike human aircraft, it made no sound as it descended, gliding through clouds like a knife through water. Military jets scrambled to intercept were ordered to maintain distance, a show of presence, not aggression. The alien vessel, smooth and silver, with strange blue lights pulsing along its hull, stopped above the United Nations building in New York. It hovered there, ignoring all attempts at communication. Then, every television, radio, computer, and phone on Earth simultaneously broadcast the same signal. Screens filled with the image of a face, almost human but not quite. The proportions were wrong, the skin too perfect, the eyes slightly too large, and an unusual shade of violet. People of Earth, the being spoke in flawless English. I am Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Imperial Authority. In homes across the world, families gathered around screens, watching with a mixture of fear and awe. Your world has been surveyed and designated for incorporation into our dominion, Krell continued, his voice pleasant but cold. This is both an honor and an inevitability. The Empire spans thousands of worlds across this galaxy. Your civilization has been classified as a Category 3 developing world, eligible for supervised advancement under Imperial guidance. In the White House Situation Room, President Martinez watched with his advisors, his face grim. Resistance is unnecessary and would result in regrettable losses, Ambassador Krell explained. Your technology cannot meaningfully oppose Imperial forces. This is not a threat, merely a statement of fact. Krell smiled, showing teeth that were too white and too uniform. We are not conquerors in the primitive sense you might understand from your own history. The Empire brings order, technology, and protection. Your lives will continue under our benevolent oversight. Your resources will contribute to the greater good of galactic civilization. The alien's expression became serious again. Your planetary leadership has 24 hours to prepare for surrender negotiations. A delegation will be received at the location you call United Nations headquarters tomorrow at this time. The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun. In the Situation Room, chaos erupted. Military generals demanded immediate action. Intelligence directors argued for diplomatic approaches. Scientists insisted they needed more time to understand the alien technology. President Martinez raised his hand for silence. What exactly are our options here? Can we fight these beings? General Wilson shook his head. Mr. President, our most advanced weapon systems might as well be slingshots against their technology. A direct military confrontation would be suicide. Surrender, then. Secretary of State Ellen Williams asked. Become a colony of this empire? No, Commander Harris spoke from where he stood near the back wall. All eyes turned to him. There is one option they haven't considered. What option, Commander? Martins asked. Project Prometheus. Sir, Harris stepped forward. It's time you were briefed on what we've been developing in secret for the past 15 years. Director Lily Rogers nodded slightly, giving Harris permission to continue. Mr. President, after the Tunguska incident in 1908, certain materials were recovered that weren't of Earth origin. It took decades for our science to even begin understanding them. But in the last 15 years, we've made significant progress. What kind of progress? Martins asked. The kind that might make even an advanced empire reconsider their approach, Harris replied. I recommend we activate the system immediately and prepare a demonstration. A demonstration of what exactly? The president pressed. Of what happens when someone threatens Earth, Harris answered simply. We can't match their fleet in direct combat, but we can make victory so costly that it becomes meaningless. Martinez studied Harris's face, looking for any sign of doubt or uncertainty. He found none. Get me everything on Project Prometheus, he ordered, and prepare a response to this Ambassador Krell. Tell him we'll meet tomorrow as requested. As the room emptied, Martinez stopped Harris with a hand on his shoulder. Is this option as dangerous as it sounds, Commander? Harris met his gaze steadily. Yes, Mr. President. It might be the most dangerous weapon humans have ever created. But right now, it's the only card we have. The helicopter flew low over the Rocky Mountains, carrying President Martinez, Commander Harris, and Director Rogers. No words were spoken during the flight. Each person was lost in their own thoughts about what might happen in the coming days. The helicopter landed on a small pad that looked like nothing more than a ranger station. Once they stepped out, Martinez saw there wasn't even a building visible, just a small shed surrounded by pine trees. "This way, Mr. President," Director Rogers said, leading them toward the shed. Inside, instead of tools, they found an elevator. Rogers pressed her palm against a scanner, then looked into a lens for eye recognition. Lily Rogers, director, plus 2 authorized visitors. The floor began to move downward. Martinez watched the level indicator, minus 100 feet, minus 200 feet, minus 500 feet, on 1,000 feet. "How deep does this go?" he asked. "Just over half a mile," Harris replied. "Deep enough to survive any conventional attack and shielded enough to remain undetectable to any known scanning technology." The elevator finally stopped. When the doors opened, Martinez was surprised to see a massive facility spread out before him. Scientists in white coats moved between workstations. Large screens displayed data streams and images of space. "Welcome to Prometheus Base, Mr. President," Rogers said. 15 years of the most classified research in human history. They walked through the facility, passing laboratories with strange equipment Martinez couldn't identify. After the Tunguska event in 1908, a Russian expedition found fragments of material that didn't match anything known to Earth science, Harris explained as they walked. Those fragments changed hands multiple times during the World Wars, eventually ending up in American possession after 1945. Rogers continued the story. "For decades, we couldn't do much with them. The material properties defied our understanding of physics. But about 20 years ago, we had a breakthrough. We realized we were looking at components of a weapon, not a bomb or missile, but something far more advanced." They stopped at a heavy door marked Core Access, Maximum Security. Both Rogers and Harris had to scan their palms and eyes together to open it. Inside was a circular chamber with a glass observation area overlooking a smaller room below. In that room, floating in midair between powerful magnetic fields, was a sphere about the size of a basketball. It looked like a piece of night sky, deep black with swirling hints of purple and blue, like a galaxy compressed into a ball. "What am I looking at?" Martinez asked, his voice hushed. "A controlled gravitational singularity," Harris said. "In simple terms, it's a contained black hole, but one we can control and direct." Martinez stared in disbelief. "A black hole? That's impossible." "We thought so too," Rogers replied. "But the aliens who built this technology didn't share our limitations. We've spent 15 years reverse engineering what we found and learning how to control it." A scientist approached with a tablet. "Director, the system is ready for demonstration as requested." Rogers nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Baker." They moved to another room filled with screens showing images of the solar system. One screen focused on Neptune and its moons. "We conducted one test of the technology 3 years ago," Harris explained. "We selected Neptune's smallest moon, Neso, as the target. It was far enough from Earth that no one would notice its disappearance." Martinez watched as one screen showed archived footage of a tiny moon suddenly collapsing in on itself, becoming a bright point of light before disappearing entirely. "The singularity consumed the entire moon, converting its mass to energy," Rogers said. "A moon disappeared, and no one on Earth noticed. The astronomical community still hasn't realized it's missing." "And you can do this to the alien ships?" Martinez asked. Harris shook his head. "Not exactly. We can't target moving objects with precision yet, but we can target planetary bodies. The demonstration we're preparing will make it clear what would happen if the Empire forces our hand." Rogers pulled up another screen showing several small devices. "These are delivery vehicles for smaller versions of the singularity. We've placed them throughout the solar system. Some are on dead man switches. If Earth experiences catastrophic damage, they activate automatically." Martinez stared at the black sphere again. "You're talking about a doomsday device?" Yes, Mr. President, Harris said quietly. If we can't save Earth, we ensure that taking it comes at a price no empire would willingly pay. The United Nations Plaza stood empty except for a small American delegation. Commander Harris wore his formal military uniform with minimal decorations. Behind him stood 4 soldiers and Dr. Collins, whose understanding of the alien language had proven invaluable. The alien ship descended silently, touching down on the plaza with remarkable precision. A door appeared in its smooth hull, sliding open to reveal Ambassador Krell and 2 taller aliens who were clearly guards. Krell smiled his too-perfect smile as he approached. Up close, the illusion of humanity was even more unsettling. He moved with unnatural smoothness, as if gravity affected him differently. Commander Harris, Krell said, extending a hand in perfect mimicry of human custom. I expected your world leaders to attend this historic occasion. Harris shook the hand briefly. It felt wrong. Too smooth, too firm. They're watching remotely. I speak with their full authority. Krell's smile faltered slightly. I see. This is unusual. Most species send their highest leaders to surrender negotiations. We're not here to surrender, Harris replied calmly. We're here to establish terms for peaceful coexistence. The alien's expression changed, showing the first genuine emotion Harris had seen. Confusion. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. The Empire does not coexist with Category 3 civilizations. You will be incorporated. This meeting is to arrange the details of that incorporation with minimal disruption. That won't work for us, Harris said. We've prepared a message for your Emperor. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small crystal data device, technology reverse-engineered from the Tunguska materials. Krell stared at the device with obvious surprise. This is Imperial technology. Yes, we've had some experience with it before your arrival. The message contains coordinates that your Emperor should observe personally within the next 6 hours. Is this some form of threat? Krell's guard stepped forward, hands moving toward weapons at their sides. Harris remained perfectly still. Not a threat. A demonstration of why incorporation would be undesirable for all parties. Will you deliver the message? After a moment of hesitation, Krell took the device. I will transmit its contents, but I must warn you that threats against the Empire typically result in immediate punitive action. It's not a threat, Harris repeated. Just watch the coordinates. 6 hours later, Ambassador Krell, Grand Admiral Vextora, and the highest-ranking officers of the Imperial fleet gathered on the command deck of the flagship. The message had been authenticated as containing actual Imperial encryption, impossible for humans to fake. This alone had caused significant concern among the Imperial leadership. The main screen showed a distant star system, uninhabited except for a small Imperial research outpost on the 4th planet. This is pointless, Vextora said impatiently. The humans are stalling. At that exact moment, a small black object appeared near the 4th planet. It was barely visible on their scanners, just a tiny dot against the vastness of space. Magnify that, Krell ordered. As they watched, the dot expanded slightly. Then, impossibly, the entire planet began to distort. Its surface seemed to stretch inward, like water circling a drain. In less than 30 seconds, the entire planet collapsed to a single point, which flashed with blinding intensity before fading to nothing. Alarms blared across the flagship. The Imperial sensors registered an energy release equivalent to converting an entire planetary mass to pure energy. The research outpost and its 200 personnel had vanished along with the planet. Impossible, Vextora whispered. That's singularity technology. The humans couldn't possibly. The Tunguska incident, Krell said suddenly. Our records indicate a scout ship crashed on Earth over a century ago. It was carrying experimental weapons technology. Technology we abandoned because it was too dangerous, another officer added. Too unstable for even our scientists to fully control. Krell turned to Vextora. Admiral, I believe we need to reassess our approach to this planet. Back on Earth, in the Prometheus facility, Harris watched the energy spike on their sensors and nodded to Director Rogers. "Message delivered," he said quietly. Rogers looked at the display with mixed emotions. "Do you think they'll understand what it means?" "They'll understand," Harris replied. "The question is whether they'll believe we're willing to use it again." The red phone on the wall rang. President Martinez was calling for an update. "It's time for Phase 2, Harris said. The negotiation. Ambassador Krell sat across from Commander Harris in a hastily prepared meeting room at the United Nations. The room had been swept for listening devices, and only 4 people were present: Harris and Dr. Collins representing Earth, Ambassador Krell, and a tall, insect-like creature introduced as Science Director Mektor representing the Empire. Gone was Krell's artificial smile and confident posture. His holographic disguise occasionally flickered, revealing glimpses of his true form: a tall, pale being with large eyes and an elongated head. "Your demonstration was received," Krell said, his voice now lacking its earlier smoothness. "The Empire wishes to understand the extent of your capabilities." Harris nodded once. "We have placed similar devices throughout this sector of space. Some are on timers, some are tied to dead man switches connected to Earth's biosphere." Dr. Collins translated Harris's words into the Imperial language for accuracy, though Krell clearly understood English. "Dead man switches?" Krell asked. "If Earth's population drops below a certain threshold, or if specific atmospheric changes are detected indicating widespread destruction, the devices activate automatically," Harris explained. "Each one targets a different Imperial world or outpost. The coordinates are unknown even to me." Science Director Mektor spoke for the first time, his voice clicking and hissing through the translator. "The technology you demonstrated is unstable. The Empire abandoned research into singularity weapons precisely because they could not be controlled reliably. You risk destroying your own world." "That was true of the original technology," Harris acknowledged, "but we've had over a century to refine it. The device you saw was our smallest version, with safety limitations in place. Our larger models can affect an entire star system." This was a careful bluff. Project Prometheus had only produced 3 functional devices, and even those were considered experimental. But the aliens didn't need to know that. Krell's eyes narrowed. "Your species would risk such widespread destruction. You would destroy inhabited worlds." Harris leaned forward. "We would prefer not to destroy anything. Our ideal outcome is peace and mutual recognition of sovereignty. The Empire does not negotiate with Category 3 civilizations," Krell said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Then reclassify us," Harris suggested. "Whatever category you reserve for civilizations that can't be safely conquered." Mektor and Krell exchanged glances, communicating silently in some way Harris couldn't perceive. "There is no such classification," Krell finally admitted. "In 10,000 years, the Empire has never encountered a pre-FTL civilization with access to singularity technology." "Then create a new classification," Harris said. "Because you have 2 choices, Ambassador. You can recognize Earth as a sovereign entity with whom you can have peaceful relations, or you can attempt to conquer us and face the consequences. Even if we left now, what guarantee would we have that you wouldn't use these weapons against Imperial worlds in the future?" Mektor asked. "The same guarantee you would have with any sovereign power. Mutually assured destruction," Harris replied. "We have no interest in expansion or conquest. Earth simply wishes to determine its own future." Krell's holographic disguise finally failed completely, revealing his true form. Without the mask of humanity, his expressions were harder to read, but the tension in his posture was clear. "I must consult with the Imperial High Command," he said at last. "This situation is unprecedented." Harris nodded. "We understand. You have 48 hours to provide your answer. During that time, we ask that your fleet maintain its current position beyond Mars orbit." After the aliens departed, Dr. Collins turned to Harris. Do you think they believed you about all the devices throughout the sector? Harris watched the alien ship rise into the sky. They believed enough to pause. That's all we needed. Back in the White House, President Martinez received Harris' report with a mixture of relief and concern. You realize what you've done, Commander. If they call our bluff. It's not entirely a bluff, Mr. President, Harris replied. We have the prototype. We've proven we can use it. Sometimes. That's enough. Martinez nodded slowly. Let's hope so, because if they choose war despite our warning, then humanity will fight, Harris said simply. But I don't think it will come to that. They're pragmatic. The Empire doesn't want a Pyrrhic victory. Now they could only wait for the Empire's response. Would it be peace, or would it be the beginning of a war unlike any Earth had ever known? 1 year had passed since the Empire's fleet departed from Earth's solar system. The morning sun glinted off the new structures rising from the plains outside Denver, massive curved buildings of glass and strange metals that seemed to change color with the light. John Harris stood on the observation platform, watching construction drones buzzing around what would become Earth's first interstellar spaceport. Beside him, Director Lily Rogers sipped her coffee, her face relaxed in a way he hadn't seen before the crisis. The last communication array goes online today, she said. We'll have direct links to the Galactic Congress and 12 member worlds. Harris nodded. And the Technology Exchange Program. Proceeding better than expected. Their medical science alone has already reduced cancer death rates by 60%. The fusion reactor blueprints have solved our energy crisis. A shuttle passed overhead, its design clearly alien but now operated by human pilots. The world had changed dramatically in 12 months. What do you think made them change their minds? Harris asked, though they had discussed this many times before. Rogers smiled slightly. You mean besides our singularity weapon? We only had one prototype, Harris replied. We bluffed our way into a seat at the galactic table with a single weapon we barely understood. I think it was more than the weapon, Rogers said thoughtfully. After their diplomats spent more time studying us, they recognized something in humanity they hadn't seen in other species. What's that? Our stubborn refusal to accept domination. Most species they encountered either fought and lost, or surrendered immediately. We did neither. We simply stated that mutual destruction was acceptable if freedom was the alternative. In the Imperial Palace, 10,000 light-years away, Emperor Zex Kran reviewed the latest reports from the Sol system. The human ambassador, a woman named Karen Bishop, had proven remarkably effective at navigating imperial politics. Already, trade agreements had been established that benefited both civilizations. Was it the right decision? The Emperor asked his advisors to grant them special status. Grand Advisor Kel Moore, who had replaced the disgraced Vextora, bowed slightly. The evidence suggests yes, Your Majesty. Their singularity technology remains concerning, but our scientific exchange has revealed they possess creativity and adaptability beyond any Category 3 civilization we've encountered. Their art forms alone have become highly valued commodities in the Central Worlds. And the security risks contained. They've agreed to limited military development in exchange for defensive technologies. The Mutual Protection Pact ensures they have no reason to use their weapons of last resort. The Emperor nodded slowly. Continue the integration process. I wish to visit their world myself within the next cycle. Back on Earth, Harris and Rogers walked toward the new diplomatic center where representatives from 30 alien civilizations now maintained embassies. Sometimes I can't believe how close we came to destruction, Rogers said. If they had called our bluff. Harris shook his head. It wasn't a bluff. I would have activated the device if they had attacked. Rogers stopped walking and studied his face. You would have triggered a chain reaction that might have destroyed half the galaxy. To protect Earth. Yes. Harris' expression remained calm. And that's exactly why it worked. They recognized the truth in my threat. A group of alien visitors passed by, tall blue beings with multiple arms who nodded respectfully to the humans, once feared as potential conquerors, now welcomed as trading partners. "We're launching the first human-built FTL ship next month," Rogers said, changing the subject. "They're letting me name it." "What did you choose?" "The Prometheus," she replied with a small smile. "It seems appropriate." Harris laughed softly. "From stealing fire from the gods to taking our place among the stars." As they entered the diplomatic center, a message chimed on Harris's communicator. The Galactic Congress had approved Earth's application to join the Security Council, an unprecedented honor for such a new member species. "They're still afraid of us, aren't they?" Rogers asked quietly. "Perhaps," Harris admitted, "but fear can become respect over time." Outside, construction continued on the spaceport that would soon send human explorers to distant stars. Earth had faced its greatest threat and emerged not as a conquered world, but as an equal among the cosmos' oldest civilizations, reminded once again that the fiercest defenders of freedom are those who refuse to surrender it, no matter the cost.